memory of Cedric?
Well, the first time I met him, which was in a rehearsal studio, and don't ask me where it was. It was myself. We were invited to join Gary's band for rehearsal, and let me think about this because I've got to get the time thing together. It would have been certainly early 1979. Whether it's January, February or not, I'm not sure. But we're put in this rehearsal studio, and I'd already auditioned, so I'd met Gary and Paul before, but I'd never met Cedric. And Cedric was there, and they had another guy who's a French guy, very nice guy, but with lots of gear. And the poor chap was really unwell that day. He had some kind of sick bug or something like that, and so he was pretty inoperative, and his communication wasn't particularly good. And although he had all the gear, he wasn't a particularly great player. So so he kind of like just disappeared and didn't come back the following day. But it wasn't just me engaging with Cedric. It was just like I really enjoyed what Gary was saying. Hearing his vision, and although it seemed like it was unrealistic for an act that was unknown, he was very, very, very focused on his ultimate vision and what he wanted to create. And Paul was just very quiet, very nice guy. I sat down and had a chat with him, and he joined in the conversation a little bit, and just sitting around having a break, having a fag, because we all smoked apart from Gary then. And Cedric was one of these characters I just engaged with straight away. And anyway, after the first night, we went down to the pub and we were having a chat, and said to me, he said, "Look, everything you've heard," he said, "it sounds great, but you've got to be realistic about this, because bearing in mind, Cedric had gone through the process of being in a fairly well-known band called Druid, assigned to EMI, and everything that could possibly go wrong went wrong with that band, which is a real shame. I think they had a couple of albums out, but it's they just became victims of what was then what happened probably to the majority of bands who were signed, because you had a record deal. There's no guarantee of success, and that's what he was trying to put across to me. So he wasn't being cynical. He's just saying, look, Gary's got these just great ideas, but whether they'll work or not, we don't know. You just don't know. So anyway, that was my first memory of him, doing that rehearsal. Which I can't remember who it was. Where the hell would it have been? I have no idea. Anyway, throughout the 2 days, Martin Mills came along, and Sue from Beggars Banquet and other people as well kept dropping in to sort of introduce themselves and hear what we were doing. And I remember we'd rehearsed a couple of songs, Our Friends Electric and Down in the Park, and we played them to the various parties that came in, and they saw that how well we bonded together. They thought that was really, really good. So that was the formation really of the four of us, and obviously we went on to do, as you know, the Pleasure Principle album, and prior to that, no, not prior to that, sorry, around about that time when that's done, I think around May of '79, the Old Grey Whistle Test slot came about, and also Top of the Pops, and then it just went nuts from there. And the two extra players are obviously Billy Curry, who Gary managed to poach off Ultravox.
Yeah.
And I don't know how, whether it's through his label or not, I'm not sure. But and then a friend of mine, he was short of a guitar player, so I recommended a friend of mine called Trevor Grant, who's a very, very good guitarist, and he played all the Whistle Tests and a couple of Top of the Pop stuff and a few sessions, but sadly it didn't work out with him. And so from that day one, the point I'm trying to make about this, from day one, there's this bond between the four of us, which really, really, looking back on it now, I feel made partly, well, no, it didn't make the Pleasure Principle. It's stupid saying that, because obviously Gary had his songs that had a lot to do with it. But the fact that we were there, and bearing in mind, yes, we were always, or Gary was always noted as being the sort of godfather of synth pop and electronics and stuff like that. This is 1979, and we still were recording, and years to come as well, on 2-inch tape, 24 track, you're in heaven if you're on a 24 track, let alone 32 or 48, that was another thing. But of course, we all played live.
Yeah.
We had a real drummer and a bass player. And Gary and I were doing keyboard duties just to get the backing tracks down. That's how it worked. And you'd make mistakes, there'd be fuck ups, you know, someone would play something wrong, and you had to do the whole process again. And you know, it's none of this sort of like, you know, Lin drums. They didn't exist in those days, as far as I remember. Maybe a prototype, an early one, but any of these sort of drum machines that exist, apart from the Roland I don't get this right, CR78, this little drum box, which I hated the bloody thing. I had to manipulate it on the tour. You know, I was responsible for the CR78. Unless had a dial on it, unless it was absolutely precise. You know, the rhythm would be either fast or slow. You know, so each night it would change. Things like "Remind Me to Smile." Do you remember that song?
Yeah.
You know, that used to be. I don't think I ever got it set to the right tempo at any given time in the tour, but it didn't matter because it wasn't that far out. But sometimes, if you were, you'd slow it down and go.
I was going to say,
pretend it was part of the process. You know,
I think on it could even be the Living Ornaments 80. I think you hear it slow down from the beginning. You can hear it slowing down.
It's too fast. Yeah, exactly. It was that, and what is it? I'm an Agent, I think, had it, and some other things as well. But of course, you know, yours truly was lumbered with it. I said, "Give it a set. He's the drummer." No, man, I'm drumming. You know, it's your problem. You know. So no, I mean, it's compared to what I was doing on the keyboards. Obviously, it was a no-brainer. But you always had to be aware of that little dial and make sure it was, you know, pointing at 1 o'clock or whatever, or there or thereabouts. But no, going back to the Pledge Principles and our relationship, the four of us, and it was a great bond. It really, really was. We were quite a disparate bunch, really. You know, we all came from different backgrounds, different ages. You know, well, different ages. I mean, Sid, God bless him, was much older than us.
Yeah.
I think it went in sort of like Cedric, me, or no, sorry, it was like Paul and Gary. They were 21 and I was 22. You know, about a year apart or whatever. And then said 27.
Yeah.
It was the old boy of the band. Used to tease him about that, but no, that's my first memory. And you know, since then, I just loved the guy to death. I thought he was brilliant, absolutely lovely guy. Really got on well with him. I stayed with him during rehearsals up in this place in Berkhamsted, and that was great. That had a great atmosphere about it because still members of Druid was still living in this house. This good old terrace house on the high street of Berkhamsted, and a great atmosphere about it. Really good pubs and sort of, you know, it was that end of 70s period. You know, people still had Afghan coats and long hair, listening to Steel Eye Span. You know, but I loved all that shit anyway. So I was in my element. I was kind of, you know, mentally I was like so far behind with the electronic stuff in terms of my mindset. I mean, Gary realised that actually. That's why he gave me loads of records to listen to, because having come from a rather stultifying classical background and studying, part of my studies were in medieval music, which I really loved. To go from like the 14th century to the 20th century was a bit of a sort of musical culture shock for me, you know. So you know, and to start to get my mind into synths, and also I hated them. You know, I really didn't like them at all, and that's well documented.
Yes.
I just thought they were just dark, meaningless, dystopian type sort of like, you know, creatures. But you know, I was totally missing the point, because that was the atmosphere that Numan was trying to create anyway. So it's perfect. And also I've realised, you know, and you know, as the years have gone by, that the synth was an incredible breakthrough in terms of allowing people to express themselves, okay, who weren't trained musicians. At that point, if you wanted to express yourself with an instrument, you had to learn an instrument.
Yeah.
With you could have very, very basic skills and create great, you know, great tunes and music.
So, but you and Cedric weren't allowed in the Blitz Club then?
Yeah, well, that's it. We stayed together. We were hanging out a lot because Gary was still in Wraysbury, Paul was in Hayes, in Essex, God, what's it, Hayes, near the airport, isn't it? Something like that. I can't say it's a place I'm not familiar with. And Ced and I were lucky enough to have a flat above the record shop one of the biggest banquet record shops in Ealing, Ealing High Street. And so when we came to town, we used to stay there. And Steve Webben was just above us. You know, he was one of the main guys from Beggars Banquet in the early days. And we used to have sort of good laughs together and all the rest of it. You know, and I actually came up with the name for his label. You know, Don't Fall Off the Mountain, Push a Goat Off Instead. But that's another story. We'll get back to Blitz Club in a minute. But no, I'm just trying to paint a background here of the fact that we're in this scruffy old flat. And Sid and I, one day Gary said, "Look, you've got to go to this Blitz Club. I'm going there tonight, whatever night it was. It could have been a weekend or midweek. I have no idea. I knew nothing about it. He was just saying this is a really interesting place to go." I don't even remember where it was. Is it in Covent Garden? Would it be?
I really don't know.
No, I can't remember. It shows how much interest I took in the whole thing, because I'll come on to that in a minute. But that whole thing, I just found, to be honest, it really wasn't my scene. But anyway, which is ironic because having written Fade to Grey,
yes,
musically creating that scene. Anyway, so sort of like, okay, we'll go there. So we had a quick bite of the week. We got to the club about 9:30, 10 o'clock. We were at the door, and some doorman came out and said, "You ain't coming in like this." You had a bit of a voice like yours. You ain't looks a bit like you actually.
Okay. You're not coming in.
So folding his arms like this, the rest of it, and he's saying, "No, dressed like that, you're not coming in." I dressed like what? We're dressed normal. He goes, "That's the problem, pal. It's not that sort of club." So I just went, "Wow." And anyway, Gary came out and he said, "What's going on, guys?" Because he's seen that there'd be this bit of a sort of like, a bit of a fuss going on outside, and he was waiting for us to come and to turn up anyway. And Sid and I explained, and he just went, and Numan went just really ballistic. And I tell you what, because that's one thing Gary's always done. He's very, very faithful to people who like him and get on with him, and well, obviously trust him. It's all a matter of trust, isn't it? No, sorry, no, but anyway, he just said, "No, fuck that," and off he went. He had nothing to do with the Blitz Club. Sid and I never got into the Blitz Club, and when I found out what it's all about, I just thought to myself, well, great, it's fantastic, if people want to do that, but it's not for me. I don't want to sort of like dress up with some weird multicolour hat and wear some bin liners around me. That's what it looked like. It's just a load of old bollocks. and so there you go. And ironically, as I said, so Steve Strange's band, Cedric and myself, who were on the fucking single that made him famous.
Yeah.
I've talked and joked about it to Rusty Egan, and I said, "You wouldn't let me go." So I would have fucking let you in, but I was doing the DJing. As Rusty goes, yeah, all right, okay, fine. No, there you go. That was our Blitz Club experience.
But how did you get? Because obviously, when you, especially with the touring principle, which did go all the way around the world at the time. Yeah. How were you getting on at that moment in time? Because obviously, Dennis Haynes had joined by then, hadn't he? In
yes, he did. I'll be honest with you. I loved the tour with Billy Currie. That was just fantastic, and I was really, really gutted when he left. I said, "Are you sure you want to go back to Ultravox? So can't you do both?" And he couldn't. He was only scheduled to do the one tour, which is a real shame. And then Dennis kind of cropped up. Actually, did he do? Yes, he did. He came in from a band called The Doll, who was signed to Beggars Banquet.
Right.
Keyboard player, remarkable keyboard player. Actually, with all the greatest of respect to all the keyboard players I've ever played with Gary Numan. I must admit that I've got to say that Dennis was, in terms of classical music, the most talented technically, and Billy Currie was the most talented on the synthesizer. Those two guys are amazing in their different domains. So Dennis was his keyboard skills are a lot better than mine. Not that it's a competition or anything like that.
No.
But he was an awkward character. He was quite divisive. He got sacked after Telecom, and Roger Mason took his place for the Teletour in the UK, but Dennis kept sort of coming back.
Yes.
Did the Wembley shows and stuff.
Yeah.
Sort of weird. And then, you know, I just kind of, you know, I don't know. Remarkable keyboard player, very, very complex, awkward person, and very moody, but extremely talented. But there you go. So I felt there were things which weren't quite gelling. Actually, having said that, it sounds like I'm really knocking the guy. We did have some good laughs together as well, but it wasn't the same as it was with Billy. And obviously Russell had joined the band, so cemented his placing. So that was really, really great and stable. But if you think about it, there was that sort of like, as I said, that sort of unit of Gary, Paul, myself, and Cedric. Russell coming in, and that cemented that sort of that unit of 5.
Yeah.
The keyboard players were always floating after that, weren't they? You know, until after the very last Wembley show, because Paul never came back, as you know, sadly. He just, you know, and so then we had the issue of different keyboard players, different bass players, but that unit of Cedric, myself, and Russell with Gary was a sort of mainstay of the band. I think Cedric missed one tour in '87 because he was off with the Q-Tips. Do you remember that?
I do, yeah.
And he was replaced by a very good drummer called Greg Brimson, who was from All About Eve and Owen Paul and stuff like that. But then Ced came back, and but that was interesting. And also, what cemented our relationship, that sort of unit, was the fact that, of course, that after Gary had finished with after the first 3 Wembley shows, his retirement, you know, shortly retirement.
Yeah, for about half a year.
We went off as Dramatis because we were out of work.
Yeah.
And so we signed off to Rocket Records, and that was myself, Cedric, Dennis, and Russ. And actually, I must admit, looking back on that, that's when Dennis was at his best. You know, he was like, we kind of got on well. It all went well. And actually, unfortunately, he left the band after the album was finished. He went off to do another project. So we were down to 3, you know, it's like the Genesis album. And then there were 3, you know.
But how did you feel? Because Billy Curry, as we know, is absolutely awesome on his album. But to comment there the other week that he was more in awe of you because he thought you were a better keyboard player than him.
Really? That's very nice of him.
No. Oh, you didn't know that?
No, well, the words of Spike Milligan, the grovelling little bastard. No, right. Well, it's very kind of insane. No, I mean, I'm not going down that road of who's better than who. We're all different. Actually, we had a very remarkably similar education in terms of we're both viola players, both keyboard players. You know, it's just the differences. As far as I know, is that he was much more aware of electronics, and I was just still stuck in the medieval period, like crumbles and Roush fifes and stuff like that, which I just had to have over here. Look, I've still got these things. Where are they? Let's dig one up. Oh, my lovely selection here. Look at this. You know, so where can you go? How can you go wrong with an instrument like this? Playing the remarkable. I mean, how can a synth beat that?
I'll be honest with you, Chris. I think the tone was so high, your microphone didn't pick it up.
Oh, you're kidding?
No, I
just done that for nothing.
Yeah.
Can I do it again?
I can dub it for you if you want.
Too high?
I don't know. It's not coming through.
Oh, you can't hear it?
No.
Oh.
No,
you still can't hear that?
I don't know whether it's coming through too loud or whatever, but the microphone's like cutting off as soon as it comes on.
Oh God, okay, all right. Well, it's bollocks to that then.
Oh, no, that's all right. I'll dub something over it.
No, don't dub it. Just cut it out. Edit it out. Like, what a waste of time. Great. That was my great moment with the Crumhorn. No, but crumhorn. No, so No, but if well, there you go. Anyway, I'll send you an album of crumble material, a link.
If you could, please.
Yeah. So what was the question? Yeah. So I can't remember. Anyway, carry on.
But then, because obviously you've done the tour in principle around the world, had a few incidences, as we know, hotel being one of them.
In my book.
And but then you then started like with Berserker would have been the first one, wasn't it? Berserker and then the Fury. That was one. So then you had Karen Taylor and Andy join.
Yeah.
But then how did you find that was, you know, the new sort of look and sound and everything?
Oh God, absolutely fantastic. I actually liked the way Gary was going. I thought, this is interesting stuff here. Very powerful synthesizers. And at about the time that time, a dear friend of mine called Nigel Bates, who's a producer engineer I've worked with for years, he'd got a PPD waveform, and I was loving it, thinking, good grief, some good stuff going on this thing. And Gary was using it as well. And I was just thinking, oh, geez, that's really, really good. So it's kind of advancing the sounds and getting away from a lot of the, you know, the sort of analog stuff that was went out of tune and caught fire and God knows what else. And so yeah, well, there was that side of it. And of course, the fact that you got two new members, you had Andy on bass, who is a lovely guy, as you know. I mean, we've done these sort of Zoom stuff together recently, and I haven't seen him for years. We always got on really, really well. And Karen, of course. So how can you not get on with Karen? I mean,
that's true. Yeah,
she's a Cornish lass. So I mean, you know, when I found that out, we just we're just instant friends. You know, so that was good. That was all good. But then, a really enjoyable tour.
What was, I can't remember the last tour you did with Gary.
I don't remember the name of it, but it's in 1989, and there are two other girls. An Australian girl called Kathy, I think she was, and the other girl, I can't remember her name. And there was Russell, Cedric, myself, Aid Orange. Who was the bass player? Oh, and Andy, of course, Andy Coughlin was the bassist.
I can't remember if it was the Metal Rhythm tour or not.
Metal Rhythm, Skin Mechanic.
So it's one of the two.
Honestly, I can't remember the names of these tours. I remember the touring principle and the Telecom tour, or whatever they call it.
Yeah. But then what? You left the band then at that point, didn't you?
I actually officially left the band in 1990. Although 89 was my last tour with Gary, I was invited back for the 1990 tour, and this is an ironic thing, right? I was working with Aid Orange on this album called Big Noise, Big Noise UK, this project, which was turned out pretty hopeless actually. But the Aid wasn't invited to do it. They were bringing back John Webb.
Right.
I just thought, well, this is a bit awkward, and I was kind of in the process of moving to France during that time. So I thought, look, you know, and also getting into sort of production music. A lot of library projects were coming up, a lot of composition stuff, and I wanted to go down that road, you know, and so I dipped out, you know, to say, well, Aid, you know, I said, look, I don't think it's fair. I'm working with Aid, so I won't do it. And then fucking 2 years later, Aid's back in the band. You know, it's like, great, thanks, pal. Could have phoned me up and said, look, you know, yeah, Chris, thanks for supporting me, but look, hey, I'm back in the band now. It's like, that's
not much longer.
Yeah, well, he was a controversial character, but the so I turned it down. That would have been around about August, September 1990. So I was officially in the band until then.
Yeah, that's a long time actually.
Well, it's 11 odd years. Yeah.
But then you've been called back a few times over the years. Yeah. And your last appearance was at Wembley this year.
Yeah.
How did that feel?
Amazing, nostalgic, weird, surreal in a way, and at the time it felt like I'd been there for 2 or 3 days back in the UK. But what happened was I literally left my house in Normandy, drove, stupid hour, half past stupid hour in the morning. Drove up to one of the Channel ports and crossed over to the UK. Got up to Wembley, met up with everybody, and had a really great afternoon, sound checking and all that sort of stuff. And before you know it, we were there, on stage, and it was a remarkable evening for several reasons. Great show. You could see, and I mean, I know the new band really well. I know David Brooks very well.
Yeah.
I know, Richard and Stephen, and getting to know Tim. I knew Tim, the old bass player, but I got Tim Slade, the new bass player. He's a lovely guy, and so instantly likable chap, and the other members of the band are great. They're good players and they're such fun, and everyone actually makes you feel really welcome, like you're kind of a bit special, and you're not really. I was just in his band for 11 years in the early days, but there's that, you've got to bear in mind, there's that sort of nostalgia thing, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
People remember what it was like back in the day, and they remember, of course, it was all part of the synonymous with their youth and stuff like that, and what they loved, great memories they would have harbored back then. Everyone says that life was so much simpler then and all that type of thing. Well, perhaps it was, I don't know, but to me it was just, I was looking at it from the inside, not from the outside. So
yeah, I suppose people would say that because, like myself, we were probably still at school, and
true. Yeah,
life would generally be a lot easier.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point.
Yeah.
But no, the event itself, I remember saying to Gary, I don't recognise this place from before, and I said, well, this is it. To me, it was like, I don't know, it just looked bigger, and of course, I will say one thing. The whole thing was different because you didn't have the massive stage sets, but you had great lighting. And on both of those Wembley occasions, you had the best support acts you could imagine. Shock on the first set of Wembley shows, and Divine Shade, I think, are absolutely fantastic.
Yeah,
I really do. And they could, they are such a great band, full of energy and passion about what they do. Yeah, I love them to death. In fact, I'm in touch with Remy, and I'm working on his album, doing sort of a couple of tracks on his with him. So that's good fun. But then I'll tell you what was weird, and I was going to save this for my book number 2, but I'll tell you anyway. You got all this chaos going on, and then I think we came on just for Our Friends Electric, which was the second encore, and behind Wembley, behind the stage, there's you wouldn't know if you've been there, but there's like it's usually quite chaotic, and you've got the big parking area at the back, and obviously the dressing rooms over to one side, left and right, and I was on the left side of the stage, and Russ was on the right. Okay, and we were waiting there, and I don't know about Russ because he was on the right flank of the stage, I was on the left, and left us, not from always point of view, from stage one, stage left, if you like. And I just felt really lonely. There's a bit they were doing Joe the Waiter. There was nobody around. There was like, I don't know, 10,000 people out front. There was the kind of Numan entourage or the Roker or whatever, all doing their thing. I was by the steps looking around, and there's fucking nobody there. So it's just like you feel so kind of isolated in that moment. Now you got to step out on stage, okay, and play. Well, it was heavy, and the violin part wasn't exactly challenging. It was okay, it was. I wasn't getting nervous. It was just a feeling of isolation, which was so odd. I never felt that before, especially in a big arena, because. For a start, when you're playing as a guest, when you're coming on, you do feel that sort of isolation and loneliness because you're not part of the band from the moment you step on stage to the moment you come off. You're coming on just to do one song. There's that aspect to it, which I didn't have when I toured with Gary in 2012 because I was guesting with him, but with Russell as well. So Russell and I had a few beers, a few sandwiches, a good chat, and the rest of it before going on stage. But that was particularly odd. But of course, when I was on stage, it was like, wow, and just the whole moment of the 5 minutes, including the false intro, which pretty hilarious. I mean,
Yes.
just about to come in. It's just like he's forgot. You know, hang on, what's going on, Steve? And I'm looking at Dave Brooks, just saying, what's happened? He goes, he's fucked it up.
Yeah, I did see that.
But he handled that brilliantly, you know, really, really, really well. Yeah, so there you go, Wembley. I must admit, as from a personal point of view, oh gosh, how can I say? You can't compare them; they were so different. The last Wembley show felt that even at our tender age, there was a feeling of we're all moving on to carry on doing stuff. I mean, I'm still working with Russ on Dramatis, although it's very much Russell's project, but I'm kind of in the background there because I can't dedicate my time purely to Dramatis. I've got so much else on, you know, some music. So, and Gary has as well. He's still got, you know, ambitions and things, and I have, and Russ has as well. So the whole process felt they were moving on. Whereas, of course, the first Wembley shows, it was the end of something. You know, it was very nostalgic. It was like it was far too, you know, premature to end the thing. I felt that, and obviously I found out recently that Gary felt it as well. I had no idea that he felt the same way, but because I was thinking, Jesus, we're just getting going with this. I was looking when I saw Shock, you know, and then knowing that we were going to go on stage after them, and all these people, this, you know, 3 nights of sellout, you know, thinking, Jesus, man, why are we stopping now? I mean, this set going around the world with a band like that, with us and Shock supporting, it would have been a phenomenal show to take around the world. You know, it would have, you know.
But
I found it sort of really, I don't know, it all felt flat. Yeah, for 2 or 3 days afterwards, I was back in my flat in Ealing and just going, not Ealing, sorry, in Fulham, and I was just thinking, shit, you know, okay, we're signed to Rocket Records, we're on our own mission now, but just didn't feel the same and felt like it's an unfinished project. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, personally, and it's easy to look back. I mean, all Gary should have done is not said a word and just didn't tour for a year.
Well, he knows that now.
Yeah,
of course, you know, it's I mean, the pressures he was under was
and I think sometimes you forget how old he was.
Yeah,
that kind of pressure, especially with the press being after him all the time. You know,
he's totally vilified by the press. I mean, there's no two ways about it. They're after him. They're gunning him and stuff like because of his political views. And all that's just such shit. Because at the end of the day, no, I don't remember any of us in the band talking about politics.
Probably not.
Never really talked about it. You know, Gary used to love talking about Spitfires and World War II and sort of like ancient aircraft, you know, and all, you know, it was combat aircraft and all that sort of stuff. That was his thing. We never talked about, you know, politics. Just didn't bother us. You know, we were just like more interested in music and other things. You know.
Well, you hadn't seen Cedric for several years, had you? But I think you met up probably a week or two before we'd done my book launch back in 2012.
No, it was worse than that. I hadn't seen Ced. Ced came over when I was at Nigel's studio, my friend's Nigel's studio in Boulogne in France, and that would have been. Hang on a minute, let me think. I was doing an album. Let's work this out. Gosh, that long ago. About 1993, something like that. He came over with Mike Smith. We had a great day together, actually a great day together. But although we kept in touch because he was busy doing his own thing, a lot of work with Mike and other stuff, and I was just like in France and coming to the UK doing loads of orchestral music sessions and recordings and recordings at Nigel's place, and then coming back here, creating my own studio. You know, life moves on, doesn't it? So we tangents, and then when we finally had a chance to get together, this would have been late February, March 2012, something like that.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And we met up at Russell's place in Maida Vale in London and went out for an absolutely blinding night. You know, it's great. A night of reminiscence, okay? A night of great laughter and chat. The way the three of us, I said to him, I said, we haven't grown up, have we? You know, we go through the same shit as we did and laughs together as we did we assigned to Dramatis, because we carried Dramatis in a way, the three of us, because Dennis had left so early that we had to go through the trauma of everything that could possibly go wrong, going wrong, you know, and our career just completely going off the rails, or going off the cliff, to be honest with you. And just for once with Dramatis, okay, I felt there was a unity, a bond there that will allow us now to continue. This was on a Saturday night, okay, sorry, it could have been a Friday night. I've got a feeling actually it may have been a Friday night. We went back to Russell's. We were chatting to the early hours of the morning. I went to bed. Cedric drove back to Berkhamsted, and I had to go back to France on the Sunday. On the following Monday, on the Monday, okay, this was like 3 days after we met up, I had this email from Russ, right, and I just couldn't believe it. It just said, you know, Ced's had a real severe heart attack, you know, he's intensive care in a hospital. I had to read it 2 or 3 times. I was like, you're fucking kidding. So I immediately sort of got in contact with him, and he didn't really know many details. So I contacted Jill, his wife, and it wasn't sounding good, you know. And so even then, you know, I knew that if he was to come out of it, he wouldn't have, you know, been the same Ced. Yeah, that's for sure. And in fact, to be honest, when you did your book launch, I think he was still on life support machine. He was, yeah. And you know, tragically, a few weeks later, he didn't make it. You know, it was that to me was kind of the end of Dramatis. I mean, I know Russ and I are continuing with it, but had Ced survived, we'd have been much more proactive. We would have worked and got things done. But sort of, I don't know, something just left the band. Not just it didn't feel. We were talking about getting other drummers in and whatever, but. It just isn't going to work, is it? And Russ and I did try. We got some stuff together, but it's all kind of like a bit all over the place, because he's always busy, I'm always busy, and we live in 2 different countries. You know? So there's all of there's that. But look, you know, I'm not giving up on it. Russ is determined to see it through. Recently, we had quite a success with the compilation on the Cherry Red. I've got that. Yeah, Cherry Red label, and it got into the it charted quite reasonably well, as far as I know. In the independent. Yeah, I mean, what it got to, it did pretty good, and certainly, you know, there's some. Russ actually contacted me today, to say there's some royalties. So. Hey, bring it on! The first time. Yeah. Don't joke about it. That's true, because actually it's true, because Russ tracked down who owned the masters, and he bought the masters for future reference, and Cherry Red had released them along with all the singles and other bits and pieces. Do you know, I haven't got a copy of the CD, so I don't know. Right. It's on it. I must go and get one. Yeah, come on, Cherry Red, you tight-fisted bastards. Give us. You would have thought they'd have sent you one by now. I've got one signed by Gary, if you want it. Well, really? What, the new one? Yeah. That is ironic, isn't it? Mind you, he's on it. No, I mean, I think a large section of Dramatis died along with Cedric. You know, it just knocked us for 6. And he was Russ and I have always been good writers together. We always, you know, communicated well and wrote some good stuff. Things like The Shame and what else did we do? Oh gosh, I Can See Her Now and stuff like that. And Ced, he was a good writer himself. I mean, he wrote. Do you remember? Face on the Wall. Yeah, that was his song. Really? Yeah. Right. You know, whether Russ had to redo the lyrics or not, I'm not sure. Probably, because I don't know if I can't remember Ced being a particularly prolific lyric writer, but I might be wrong. But certainly, it was Russ that Russ was responsible for the majority of the lyrics. I think I contributed to one song on the album, which is called Turn. And I actually sang on it. It's only supposed to be a demo, so either demo's all Russ could sing on it. Right. No, we're keeping that. What are you kidding, are you? That live, you know. like I said, he was one of the most interesting person I've ever met. And let's not forget his drumming, absolutely fantastic. Sum me up in one sentence, you can't.
Right.
There are so many levels, right? But all I call him is gentleman said.